So yeah, as I say, thank you very much for that introduction. We are two of the three co-founding directors, two of the five original founders, all from Cardiff University. And yeah, we are, as you say, CAUKIN Studio. So this is us here. We're an architectural social enterprise using design and build projects as a vehicle to create social, environmental, and economic impact. So that's kind of one of our main kind of strapline or ethos line of the company. But to kind of explain that, what we mean by impact through architecture is to have impact or to make a change, a positive change through all of these different possible avenues or extended areas that are in connection with architecture. So for example, the first and most obvious is the building itself. So obviously having an impact through the structure we make and build. I think we'll keep admitting people, we're getting a few little notifications. But yeah, so through the building itself is kind of most obvious and clearest impact that we have. Through the on-site upskilling that we do and educational courses that we deliver. So upskilling of local community members and of international participants, and we'll get into more detail on that as we sort of get further down the line. Impact through the contextual logistics that we carry out. So this is contextual in terms of where the projects might be, the type of low-tech techniques, as you can see here on the left, which is a dropping off of giant pine poles in Fiji, or on the right-hand side, delivering all of our materials to a very remote site on an island in Fiji. So contextual in terms of what's available, but also logistics in terms of using what is as close as possible to the project site, which leads us into having impact through the materials that we specify, the materials that we choose to build with. So being as sustainable as we can. Having impact through the way that we actually sort of help to try and empower local people by involving and engaging end users and the community users from the earliest point possible within the design or within the brief formation. And through hopefully educating further generations. So whether that's local young women on site or architectural or engineering students, much like yourselves. So that's kind of what we mean when we say impact through architecture, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. And just trying to show that architecture should be more than just the building itself, and a lot more of an emphasis should be placed on that process and how can we maximize that in every possible way. So this is basically over the sort of lockdown period, the last sort of 6 or 7 months. It's actually been quite a good opportunity for us to, I guess, revisit some of our past work and analyze how we want to talk about ourselves and present ourselves. And I guess that's kind of been narrowed down to this kind of, I guess, kind of slogan or ethos point, which is democratic education, quality design, accessible for all. And every human being should have the opportunity and tools to shape the spaces they inhabit. And we should all benefit from the quality of life that is achieved through informed design. As well as that, construction has to reduce its environmental impact on our planet. And the way in which we do this is kind of through 3 key points, or 3, I guess, key methods. The first of which is design through collaboration. So making sure that all of these different stakeholders involved in a project all have an equal say, and we're all working towards a common goal and a common sort of end sort of aspiration, and finding techniques and ways in which to do that enables maybe some of the quieter voices to actually stand at the forefront of that whole process, and putting our sort of role in a project as more of a kind of facilitator role. There's then learning through building. So as recent graduates ourselves, we see the benefits of learning through doing and learning through construction, being on site, and actually something that is potentially missing in a lot of architectural education. So not only continually educating ourselves and in the international students that come away with us, but also the local communities, many of which have a ton of building experience, but it's kind of finding that combination where we can add some design expertise, they can bring construction knowledge, and we can use that sort of whole sort of collaborative process to make sure we're upskilling everybody involved through that. Yeah. And then finally, experience through immersion. So the kind of other 50% of a project, or at least with our international projects, is the immersion of living and working within a community, staying in the families, staying in the homes, and I guess making sure we're getting as much hands-on with daily life and trying to remove the idea of guest and host kind of roles and making it as integrated as possible. And by doing that, you're then building up a trust between us and the local community, and therefore getting a much more truthful response from them in terms of their attitude to working on sites, their attitude towards the building, and vice versa as well.
So yeah, where did it all begin? So as you mentioned earlier, we are Cardiff University WSA graduates. So it actually started in our second year at university. We all, well, predominantly lived together and spent a lot of time together. So naturally got talking about kind of our interests, what we've done previously and that kind of thing. So having done a little bit of traveling before, and with a lot of our sort of year group peers in second year, looking up internships, a lot of which at the time and probably still will be, were unpaid, and they were in large kind of faceless practices or you know, doing maybe jobs or functions within the practice that weren't particularly appealing to us. We wanted to find a way to put the skills that we were learning and put the expertise or the knowledge that we were gaining at university into practice. So what we did was we reached out to hundreds of charities, of NGOs, groups working in different areas in schools or medical sort of sectors or whatever it might be, and tried to find a project for us to go out and build. So eventually someone sort of took the bait, and a group called Friends of Korong in Cambodia were really keen to have us over and build something for them. They explained the sort of issue that they had there with the rising levels of tourism on the island, the negative impact of this with alcohol and drug use and late nights and sort of fast food was really impacting the safety or maybe the wider environment for the kids at the school. They didn't have somewhere safe to play during their break times or during after school hours. And we kind of expanded that as well to, once we got into the discussion about the brief, into creating a small external classroom as well for the also sheltered learning space for the kids to use outside of school as well, which you can see on the right here. Initially, we did kind of what anyone would do and looked at our friends and family and looked at crowdfunding and how can we sort of fund this within our own means, and managed to get a decent amount of the money together. We also struck quite lucky in that the music artist Caribou was sort of auctioning off or looking for interesting ideas for this giant sculptural fish here on the right-hand side. We obviously got in contact, told him what we were up to, and immediately he loved the idea. And through some of his channels and streams as well, he managed to help us expose the project and get the funding that we needed. Obviously, having completed this, through this experience and through completing this, we knew that the kind of obvious returns were going to be that the community were going to get an amazing project. They were going to have this specific or bespoke design and built structure for the kids and the school to use. But we kind of maybe didn't really anticipate maybe the amount that we were going to learn through this process, and through talking to the people that also came away with us and hearing about the value that they got from the project. We thought this is something that everyone who's enthusiastic about or proactive about should have the opportunity to go away and to learn themselves, to sort of help supplement whatever they were doing at university. Obviously, this kind of funding model wasn't really sustainable. We couldn't just keep going and asking mum and dad for money and hoping that international music artists would pick up our projects. So we had to think of a more kind of reliable way of funding the projects. And that was when the inception of I suppose, CAUKIN as it is now kind of began. We expanded to 2 projects. So these were 2 playgrounds again. So again, a nice kind of manageable scale for the abilities and the experience we had at the time. And we stretched out to 2 projects rather than 1, although both located in Indonesia, and stretched out to a few extra universities and brought out other students with us on that one.
So beyond those sort of first 3 projects, I think we were then approaching, that would have been after our 3rd year. So we were then approaching our masters, and it was kind of time to, I guess, try and increase the scale and the complexity of the kind of projects we were taking on, and I guess refining the process as well that would enable that to happen. So, we've kind of established 6 key stakeholders that are essential for a project to be run smoothly and successfully. And the first of which being the local community, making sure that they're involved right from the brief making process, the design, construction, all the way through to the handover, making sure that they have the ownership of the project and that they're going to love it, use it, and maintain it. There's then an NGO or charity partner. So on each of our international projects, we'll look to partner with a local figurehead or somebody that has established a network and a trust in that area. And their responsibility is to identify the needs of the community, organize local logistics, and also fundraise for the actual build cost as well. So that was taking away the sort of the massive amount of fundraising time that was, is not really our skills nor our expertise, or we don't have the network to do that. There's then the international participants. So you guys, architecture, engineering, design students, and recent graduates or young professionals that are looking to both put their knowledge and expertise into good use, but also learn through on-site construction, learn through building and working in a completely different context and climate than you might otherwise have the opportunity to do. There's then the local skilled workers. So we'll work with the NGO partner to identify a few key people within the surrounding sort of neighborhood or within the village itself that have the necessary carpentry or bricklaying or welding skills that are required for the project. And their role will be to not only educate ourselves and the international participants, but also educate younger members of the community that want to, pursue this kind of career or, increase their employability skills. There's then the sponsors and donors. These are often an extension of our network or an extension of the NGO's network. And that will either be people that are donating financially for materials directly on the project, or it will be people working pro bono and providing their services, such as engineers or environmental design specialists. And finally, there's us as a facilitator, making sure that all the stakeholders are involved throughout the project and everybody has that input and that kind of contribution. So this was, we'd kind of established this new setup, and this was like our first stab at putting that into practice. It was much bigger scale up than we'd previously done in previous years. And we seem to have joined the meeting ourselves. So these were in Fiji. We reached out to a number of different charities and were lucky enough to be in contact with the Nangango Giving Foundation. And over the course of sort of 7 or 8 months or even longer, we were Skyping Max, who's the main sort of figurehead there, week in, week out, making sure that all the logistics were in place, the funding was in place, how it was going to work. And it was also the first time we'd really increased the reach in terms of students coming away with us as well. So we had students from 4 or 5 or 6 different universities, rather than previously being mainly Cardiff and a couple of Sheffield students. This was a kindergarten and this was a kindergarten and community hall, but we'll touch on that a little bit later.
So following this, as Harry said, that was kind of the start of our masters. So in 4th year, when you're if you stay on at Cardiff, you're working in practice. We were doing this alongside the professional work that we were doing. The following year after that, in 5th year, we came back to university to study to complete that master's degree. And sort of over the summer, we contacted the university and spoke to them about potentially using or combining what we were doing outside of university within CAUKIN with our master's thesis. They asked us to sort of propose a few different briefs and propose something that was complex enough in its nature and within what was happening in terms of the issue or sort of global effects, and something that would have enough of a design output that would be able to be used as our thesis. So the project that we put forward was designing a vocational education center in Karnataka, India. So was working to reinstate or help return to regular society or paid work or education those that had been in bonded labor in India. So it's a huge issue in India that hundreds of thousands, millions of people suffer from, and internationally. So we collaborated with a charity called Javika Free, whose ethos and mission is to free those that are in bonded labor within India. And we worked on a vocational center. Through this kind of process, we started off looking firstly internally at the company, looking at what we do, looking at how we act or how we portray ourselves or how we talk about ourselves and how we critique our own work. And through this kind of process, and then going through an actual design process as you would any other design, we were able to get a really critical review on us as a company and what we were doing within that company as individuals. So this is some of the work here. And these are images from our study trip over to India that year, the various different people we met. So again, end users, current bonded laborers, freed bonded laborers, and looking at material kind of research and what was available and all these kind of contextual issues around the design itself. This kind of critical look at what we did throughout our master's thesis allowed us to then put that into practice once we left university. So this helped us to refine the way that we select our projects. So now we have a kind of core 4 principles that have to be met before sort of agreeing or deciding and putting into motion a project as a company. So the first one is that we have to make sure that the project itself has been approved by the community leaders. So these are people within the community with the authority to sort of allow the building to happen in lots of different countries and different contexts. There's different hierarchies of councils or of elder sort of village members and things like that allow projects to happen. This sort of goes hand in hand with the sensitivity being taken in choosing the project itself, and whether we're in the sort of best position to deliver that solution. So by working closely with those community leaders, we can make sure that we're going to be adding value to the brief, to the design, and to the overall impact that we can have as a company for that local community. As part of that is the community themselves being fully involved in the process. So not just coming away sort of within the 2 months that we're building and helping to build, but actually being involved in the brief making, being available to sort of review design iterations and suggest changes and all of these kinds of aspects as well. But yeah, and then finally, obviously being there on the construction as well. And then that kind of goes hand in hand with the skill exchange opportunities. So that's making sure that the project is going to be a vehicle for architectural or kind of design and construction education for both our international participants, but also for upskilling local community members as well. So once all those 4 are kind of, we're pretty confident that those are all going to be able to be ticked off on a project. We'll then have kind of wider project objectives that each will kind of slot into.
So the first of which is a community-wide social impact. So this is just something that will enhance the day-to-day life of a community. That could be something that's to do with education. It could be a health facility, a community facility, and that's looking at more of a community rather than specifically, a single house or a single dwelling. There's then a long-term economic impact. So these are on projects which can create a sustainable income for those that we're partnering with, and that's both through the building itself and the function of the building. So in this case, which we'll talk about a little bit later, it was a virgin coconut oil processing plant for an island in Fiji, and therefore they'd be able to increase their sales, increase their income, and therefore continue developing the island themselves. But also making sure that through the project, we're injecting finances into the local economy, into the families. That's helping to provide food, etc. And over that 2-month period, just trying to sort of boost the whole local economy there. And finally, there's a low or positive environmental impact. This is both in terms of partnering with charities that are actively looking to tackle environmental issues. This is an example in the Eden Project in the UK with a bee conservation charity that were looking to sort of raise awareness of some of the issues that the native Cornish dark honeybee is going through, but also making sure that on all of our projects we're using either reclaimed materials or locally sourced materials that have a low carbon embodied energy, and that we're sort of trying to reduce our impact that way.
Yeah, so just really quickly, the kind of process that we go to, we've already alluded to this a little bit, but I guess first up is making sure that we've had that confirmation and acceptance or sort of recognition of an impactful project being needed with the village authority or the local authorities. That then goes hand in hand with the community consultation and brief formulation. So that's working really closely with the end users. Ideally getting out there, or if we're already out there for the sort of next year, making sure we do plenty of workshops and talk about ideas and getting really honest feedback through our NGO and through the kind of head spokespeople of the community as well. All of that information will then be taken and kind of formalized a little bit into various different kind of documents, but most of all into a design brief. That design brief will then help to kickstart the conceptual design. So that's visualizations using all different kind of computer software, but also hand drawn and all these kind of different methods that allow us to then communicate the various different parts of the design that hopefully resolve the aspects of that brief that we've come and put together with the community. So these will then be fed back to the community through often the NGO. They'll be also fed back to the various other stakeholders, so to the participants or to the engineers or whoever else is on board, to the NGO, maybe to help with sort of funding and applications like that. So these visuals will give the first insight into what the project might look like and gives us some really rich feedback from all those different stakeholders that we can then take forward into the developed design. So developed design and detailing all the way through to kind of construction details. So as you can see here, this is for the Zambia project. This is the window openings, and sort of really getting down to how exactly everything's going to fit together, what we're going to have to source, what materials we're going to need, and what kind of skill level we're going to need as well. And then finally, once all those construction drawings have been drawn and we've managed to get all the quantities of the materials and everything together, and they're all ordered, we go into the actual construction itself. So that's where the whole team will come together, international participants, the NGO, the local community, skilled workers, and we'll be on site for sort of 1 to 3 months, sometimes a little bit more depending on the scale. And this is the kind of final outcome.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting there as well. So when we're doing those kind of the construction stage drawing pack, that is, we often do the design up to maybe 80% complete and leaving about, I don't know, 20% to be done and finished and designed on site, which basically means we can be a lot more flexible through that initial construction phase, looking at any materials that we might have missed or opportunities for more interesting cladding, making sure that the locals have that kind of ownership if they hadn't been able to directly input through design workshops previously. So it's all about kind of making sure we have the structural stuff signed off, any sort of big material orders done, but allowing ourselves and allowing the process to be a little bit more flexible to make sure we can sort of cover any changes. So we're kind of going to go through some of our key projects. I'm a little bit aware of time and wanting to make sure we have enough time for questions. So we'll go through these fairly quickly and just kind of pick up a few key points for each one. I think the key point on this project is a kind of a social issue that we feel very strongly about. And this was kind of one of the first opportunities to really address it properly. And we shared a very similar ethos to the charity we're working with. And that was to make sure that our on-site local construction team was 50% male and 50% female. As everyone will be aware, the construction industry is very male dominated, and that goes through to certain engineering industries, architecture as well. So trying to identify why that is and how we can start to break down those sort of gender roles, especially in contexts like this where they can be a little bit more prescribed than they might be here in the UK. So that's something that we're looking to roll out more formally on the rest of our projects as well, no matter the location. And that's always been super well received as well from the local team.
The next one was another completed last year in 2019, kind of mentioned already, but the Bulubitiki coconut oil processing plant on one of the very small islands in Fiji. So we already saw that image of the materials being offloaded from a massive cargo ship in the middle of the Pacific Ocean onto a little fishing boat. This village, or this series of villages on the island, actually there's no roads, everything came in by boat straight onto the beach. So it was a real kind of logistical challenge. This project is kind of one of our most apt when it comes to kind of economic challenges. So on the island of Batiki, they set up a community cooperative. The group just were looking kind of at how they could make money without kind of impacting their daily lives too much. And a material they had kind of an abundant resource of was coconuts. And they decided to, if they could add value to that product by making it into an oil, an essential or natural oil. They were originally producing this in pretty ill-fit spaces, so dark and dingy houses or community halls or spaces without the kind of lighting levels or hygiene levels that were required to kind of produce it to a level where they could sell it commercially. So we were approached and asked to build a purpose-built or bespoke design for the whole process from coconuts all the way through to sort of jarred and bottled oil. So they now are able to produce and increase the actual production itself, but also produce oil, more importantly, to the level and to the standards that gained the hygiene certification that's now allowing them to sell it internationally in both Australia and New Zealand. This kind of project or this structure and kind of encompass project is now allowing the various villages on the island the economic independence that they require should some other kind of financial burden come up, or if, say, the fishing industry that they rely on sort of starts to die out a bit, or one year they don't get the crop from their farm that they need, they now have this second source and reliable source that they can now make sure they're still returning or gaining a sort of income from.
This was the 90 Community Hall. I guess one of the key things about this project that we'll highlight was that obviously, as well, in Fiji, the community hall is a really sort of vital space within any village. It's where any weddings will happen, funerals, events, craft making, etc. So it needed to be this flexible, adaptable space. And once we revisited it a year on, we found out that they'd not only been using it as the sort of expected function, but they'd also integrated a kindergarten class 2 days a week. And then due to the success of that, the government had got involved and asked them to increase it to 5 days a week into a proper full-time secondary school. And through that, they were going to educate and train a local teacher to then run that. So that was great for us to see the kind of flexible nature of the project, and kind of highlights how the use can change and should change based on the needs of the community and how that changes and adapts over time. So that was really great for us to see that kind of difference. This is again, was completed last year in Vanuatu. It's a school, classroom space, office space, and also library space. This was quite a unique project and quite a unique issue. We were approached, I think, well, about 2 years ago by a charity that had done a survey on an island called Pentecost Island in Vanuatu after they were hit by a cyclone in 2015. They'd gone around all of the different schools on the island, all of the different villages, and assessed their different needs. And they basically narrowed down 2 villages that not only lost their schools because of the cyclone, but they faced a, I guess, slightly unusual challenge, which was that because they were their location within the mountains, they faced very high humidity all year round. And this high humidity and the high moisture content in the air was meaning their learning materials, their books and their paper, etc., was all getting very damp and deteriorating. And any books that were being donated wouldn't last very long at all. So they needed a space, a library space, to store all of these books, but also find a passive and natural way to reduce the relative humidity and therefore prolong the life of the books. And so we worked with a couple of environmental design specialists at Cardiff University and came up with a few different strategies to help reduce this number. And we took a few data recording equipments out with us and left those out there to actually measure the data. And it was quite great for us to have a kind of quantitative way of measuring whether a project is successful or not. And a lot of previous projects, the evaluation is a lot of I guess anecdotal, or how are people using it now, what has it changed, etc. But this was a lot more direct. Is it what is the percentage lower? And luckily it is, well, hopefully not luck, but it is lower, about 20% lower in that library space. So that's good news as well.
Cool. We're already getting questions in, so we'll really rattle through these now. So we've already mentioned this one already, but this is the Hive Mind Pavilion in the Eden Project in the southwest of England. As we mentioned before, raising awareness of pollinators in the UK and how important they are in the wider chain that they exist in. So this is obviously an environmental, a very strong environmental ethos to this project, and was there as a beacon to draw in visitors to come and learn more about that issue. So just going into sort of project evaluation, Harry's already kind of touched on it. We do get a lot of qualitative, sort of feedback from a lot of the communities that we work with. This was the one in Nweni, one of the first projects that we built in Fiji that we mentioned earlier. Kindergarten that originally, before we arrived in 2017, was being taught out of the cafeteria space, dark and again very unsuitable for early years and children to learn in. They couldn't sort of keep their stuff out. It was always being used at lunchtime and things like that. So it just really wasn't suitable at all. So we got out there in 2017 and with the local community built this Nweni kindergarten structure. And then a year later in 2018, we returned back and spoke to the kindergarten teacher here on the right, Salome, and asked how everything was going. She said it was brilliant. They had loads of kids. They had over 30 kids within 1 year. So it more than tripled the attendance. She said, because they're on a bit of a main road there, that parents and people were passing by and seeing the structure and going, oh, wow, look at that structure. I want my kids to go to school there. So they were getting more and more people coming and asking if their kids could come to school here. They were having to actually start turning people away. There was a sort of part-time or voluntary, I guess, assistant that was helping Salome out, and they just weren't able to kind of get to every single kid that wanted to come and learn there. So we decided the year after, in 2019, to return back and with the information that Salome had given us about the extra kids and the potential extra teacher or assistant teacher, to build another classroom space. So linking together over a series of little bridges for now over 50 kids to go and learn there. So over 5 times the original 8 that were in that dark and dingy cafe in 2017.
So as well as analysing individual projects, the lockdown kind of gave us an opportunity to analyse what we'd achieved to date as a wider company and look at some of the issues that we're trying to tackle. So I won't go through all of these, but just some of the, I guess, the key numbers presented here. And again, some of the more anecdotal impact highlights as well. Maybe some of these will pop up in questions. We're, I guess, moving forward now, looking at ways in which we can diversify and respond to the COVID-19 situation. This year, all of our projects had to be postponed until next year. That gave us, a fair bit of extra time on our hands, and also forced us to think about different ways in which we could use the same principles and same techniques that we've been applying to our projects abroad, and how we can apply that here in the UK a little bit closer to home, tackle some issues that our communities face, such as mental health, loneliness, homelessness, etc., and see where we can slot into that framework and that different framework. So as part of that, we were kind of looking at, I don't know what the best order to talk about this is. So not only looking at ways we can tackle issues close to home, but also increase our educational offering, and how can we do that in a virtual setting that wasn't going to be as restrictive as requiring everybody to fly out to the other side of the world for 4 or 8 weeks. So we ran a virtual design workshop, which was surrounding an issue that we're researching recently and looking to pursue, and it's a problem in the South Pacific to do with the constant destruction and rebuilding of homes after cyclones. And is there a way in which this can be tackled with a more solid prototype house that is also comfortable to live in? There's a few guidelines that exist in terms of building back stronger, but they often, by making it stronger, they forget about all the other principles of what makes a home nice to live in, such as nice lighting, good ventilation, a good amount of space, etc. So that was actually a very new kind of project for us, something that's completely virtual and a lot more research based. And I think that went quite successfully. We're now taking that research and the students' work forward into a number of different proposals, which we can take to government authorities and big grants and big funders to try and start rolling out a more of a, I guess, integrated scheme that could have a bigger impact than just a single building.
As well as this, so that's on the right hand side there. On the left hand side is a project we worked on in partnership with a larger, going and looking at competitions that we can work on in either larger developments or with larger architectural practices. So that's something else we're looking at, where we can plug in as a community engagement kind of group whilst delivering the project on site and within the formulation of the brief. Then these were, again, competition entries, looking at ways to incorporate issues close to home, as Harry said. So the top one here is looking at food waste and composting and creating a kind of installational beacon that, again, draws interest to those kind of problems. And the lower one here is looking at community-owned commercial ventures. So if a village in the South Pacific could have a kind of guest house or a bunkhouse that they own, maintain, and run as a company, how would that kind of look, and how would that business work? And then finally, as we talked about some competitions that we've entered recently, and this is just one for a kind of craft museum over in Norway. So partnering again with another architectural, or an architect rather, a sole practitioner who also went to Cardiff University, and seeing how that kind of relationship of inter-practice kind of design and hopefully, if we win it, construction can work in a competition setting. So if you have any questions, there's just a couple of nice photos of the various teams we've got. There might be some familiar faces there, but yeah, please do feel free to shout them out, or if you don't want to talk, feel free to put them into the chat. I think there was some already in there. So where do you see this enterprise going in the medium to long-term future? I guess we sort of answered that one. In the medium term, I guess we're looking to roll out a lot more of these virtual workshops. So with kind of targeted research topics that are integrated into the summer builds. So for example, there'll be a series of virtual workshops that'll come out in advance of 2021's summer build projects. So those will all be related to the kind of brief itself and looking at a wider research around that topic. As well as this, we're hopefully going to get more work in the UK, as we mentioned, either through partnering with other design and architectural firms, or through kind of transplanting or transposing our collaborative or collaborator-based model into issues close to home. So we're currently working on an art installation that'll be in the centre of London that's to do with drawing attention and getting people talking about mental health and how mental health and therapy for such is delivered. don't know if you've got more about that.
Yeah, so I guess, yeah, trying to apply these sort of techniques we've developed into new and different kinds of projects, art projects, different kinds of educational projects. Something that we've recently started to put into motion is actually working with younger age groups, kids as well. So running shorter style workshops, 1 or 2 weeks, with schools that are located in more underprivileged areas, and looking at how we can be more active in diversifying the architectural profession as a whole. And I think the best way for us to do that is to work with a much younger generation of students, and I guess demonstrate and show that this is a career option that should be available to them, that is available to them, that might be fit within their interests and their ambitions. And so by running these kind of 1 or 2 week workshops in schools with children from different backgrounds, hopefully that can have a much longer knock-on effect. So we've started to put together some documents for that and contact schools, and had already a really, really positive response. So that's something, hopefully in the short term or long term is something that we can integrate, in a lot of our projects going forward.
For sure. The next question is, are you running a project this summer for first year students to get involved in? If you're referring to Vertical Studio, I'm not even sure if that's happening this year. Sort of the first and second year specific studios. We will be running projects though, build projects this summer. There's due to be 4 projects that are actually all already released on our website. So you're welcome to go and have a look at that. We'll put links and stuff into the chat or whatever for people. But those are the Errata hall in Fiji. So that's a community hall, again, working with the same charity we've worked with now for 4 years, building another community hall and sort of cyclone evacuation point. But the difference with this hall will be that it'll be a space for the local women's groups to meet and to sell their handicraft, much like 90 turned into, but actually starting out with that kind of initial brief as well. There'll be the Bogor Sustainable Home project, which will be in collaboration with a group called Circundeso, that are kind of a vocational type skills group, teaching local people various different things to help them with all sorts of daily life tasks or employability kind of issues. But this home will be for their kind of team, their maintenance team, or their kind of delivery team, and hopefully will be one that can be rolled out further through kind of exemplar or harnessing green energy or passive design solutions. So things like rainwater catchment and storage, solar energy, all these kinds of things will be incorporated. Passive ventilation, passive lighting strategies will all be incorporated into this house, that will then hopefully be an exemplar to be rolled out further around the rest of Indonesia. The other 2 projects are the Evergreen Kindergarten in Zambia. So following on from the school that we built there last year, the 4 classrooms and teaching office that we mentioned earlier, there'll be a kindergarten project there. So building a space specifically for early years learners, hopefully something really fun, but at the same time secure for them to learn in a nice, safe environment with lots of playful elements and kind of really tiny little child-specific furniture and all this kind of stuff. And then finally is the Tambok School and Library, I suppose, so a similar kind of brief to Ranwas last year. So back on Pentecost Island in Vanuatu, looking at timber construction predominantly, and how we can create a passively designed and low-tech designed moisture reducing library and learning space for the kids of that community as well.
Yeah, so all 4 of those projects will have a correlating virtual workshop, which is more design based, which will run in sort of March time next year, with the actual construction happening in July, August sort of time. So you can either get involved with both or one. You don't have to be involved in the whole thing. And as well as that, there will be hopefully small opportunities to do projects in the UK as well. So we're looking at getting a small team involved in that art installation in London that we spoke about, to do with mental health. hopefully some other interesting projects in the UK that are in the pipeline as well, if travel is still an issue.
Yeah, for sure. And we actually do have a couple of ex-Cardiff students who are kind of scoping out potential projects for us. So that's always fun as well to link back up with people. So I guess that answers your question, Katie. Lizzie, with a lot of traveling to international projects, how do you balance the environmental impact of the flights? That's a good question.
Yes, this is a good question, actually. Yeah, it's something that we've thought about quite a lot over the last few years about, obviously, you know, we can make our buildings as environmentally positive as possible and sourcing all of our materials locally and sustainable materials, etc. But actually, how do we combat that, the impact of all of the flights and transporting a team of international students and graduates to these places each year? And I think it's about trying to weigh up the benefits, the pros and cons of having these students involved. And I think, you know, it's something we feel very strongly adds a huge value to a project, has a huge value to the experience of the locals and the local community and how they perceive the project, but also in terms of the education that those people are gaining from it. And if through these projects we can keep building a bigger and bigger network of people that share the same kind of ambition to complete humanitarian projects or complete impact type of architecture, then I think the benefits of creating that network and upskilling and educating people far outweighs the impacts of those flights. But in addition, we're also partnering with do you know what the company's called?
Rewilding Group in the UK,
yeah. A charity. What are they called? It's basically a carbon. Their mission is basically carbon offsetting, and by doing a number of different initiatives, obviously planting trees, but a number of other issues as well, working with communities around the world to therefore offset our kind of flight impact type stuff. So on every project, each participant, a part of that cost, the participation cost, goes towards that charity and goes towards their mission of offsetting the flights as well. So hopefully, as a company as a whole, we can bring ourselves back down to, I guess, as net zero.
That's possible. I think then also super long term, we're hoping that eventually, obviously with the advent of our virtual workshops, that obviously reduces a lot of that kind of impact as well. Because people that maybe don't feel like they want to go all the way out there for that exact reason, they don't have to, and while still getting the same educational kind of value from just a kind of theoretical side of things. Aside from that, we're looking really long term to have kind of local teams. So this is both from a community and social aspect and an economical one as well, but hugely on the environmental side as well. So that's having kind of satellite teams of local people that have trained in architectural design or engineering and have maybe helped us project manage like a hall build in Fiji or something, and setting up a satellite team out there that would then be able to deliver projects locally as well, and far reduce that potentially a lot of that traveling. But yeah, for sure, as Harry said, it's all about kind of balancing and weighing up the different values that are incorporated in those decisions. Yeah.
Okay, I'll kind of I just wanted to say thank you to you guys. I'm
Sure.
Tanya, by the way. With the talk and all the technical difficulties, it was really interesting to hear you guys. I just wanted to ask if, obviously you guys were really young when you started as well. You were our age. So how did you shift from that university mindset to working and taking the initiative and all that? That must be so, that seems difficult to me.
I think, and I'll say my bit, and then Harry might feel a bit differently, but I think massively it was kind of like a blind naivety or just ambition to know what we wanted to do and know that we wanted to go out and do these projects, but not really thinking of everything that we came up against as a barrier, but more of just like an opportunity. So if something was difficult, it was actually just an opportunity to learn. And it sounds like super cliche, but that is actually kind of how we came across it. We were really, really lucky, and always kind of think back on our time at university that there were 5 of us. So we were able to work as a team, and we were able to put aside, a bit of time every week to look at CAUKIN and what we were doing and work on it together. And all of our different strengths and interests allowed us to kind of do that as a group. But yeah, it was really difficult, and time management was often really tricky. I think once we got into 4th year and we'd worked in a practice, you kind of get a lot better at knowing what is important to put your time into and how to prioritize your time. So then CAUKIN just kind of became another project within that kind of timetabling of our resource, I suppose, individually. But then, as you say, we were really lucky to go from 5th year straight into, and obviously within 5th year, study CAUKIN kind of academically. So that was a massive help. And then from there, go straight into working full time. And I guess that kind of was a bit of a pretty smooth transition, because obviously at university we hadn't had any maybe financial responsibilities or families or anything like that. So being really young and still having, a lot of that energy meant that we were able to kind of really press forward and as a group kind of drive the kind of standards forwards of whatever we were doing.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's often, we talk to so many students that have ideas for projects or initiatives that they want to start. But a lot of people are worried that maybe they don't have the confidence just to do it, or they're worried that they haven't got the right skills yet, or they haven't got the right team yet. And they're going to work for a few years before they start it, and then time goes on, and it ends up never happening. So I think it was very fortunate for us to find a group, the 5 of us all being like-minded and wanting to do the same thing. But equally, if anybody here does have initiatives that they want to start, or architecture related or not, I would definitely say you do have to just sort of jump in the deep end and go for it, because there are so many benefits to starting it young, like not having any financial commitments, having more time than you think you probably have. I know architecture is notorious for being the 100% of your time, and you got nothing, no downtime or anything like that. But I think if you're smart with how you approach your work, then you'll probably realize that actually there's plenty of other fun things you could be doing. So yeah,
I would definitely add to that as well. Sorry, although there were 5 of us with different skill sets, obviously we all came from the same course. If there ever was like a break in our knowledge or a gap in our knowledge, it was just reaching out to other people. There's so many people out there that want to help, especially whilst you're a student. Maybe we're learning as you become a commercial venture, less so now because we're maybe competition or what have you, but we still get a huge amount of help from people in the humanitarian sectors. It's kind of a collaborative sector, but asking people to fill knowledge that you don't have, and using those critical friends, so maybe tutors that you've had throughout university, or lecturers that you thought were particularly knowledgeable, or even just often we reach out to people on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, and ask them how they built a particular project, and we get really positive responses. So it's reaching out to people that maybe you look up to, or practices that you want to be like, and but as Harry says, still going for it yourself. And definitely starting at university, like you have so much access to the enterprise group, to business innovation groups, to grants, to funds, things like that, that once you leave university and you get past the threshold of however many years of being an alumni, a member of the alumni, you kind of start to lose that. So I'd really make the most of that structure and that framework that is around you at university, and just ask either tutors at uni or the guys at the enterprise team how they can help, and they'll be able to set up sessions to talk about all the businessy stuff that we didn't have a clue about when we first started as well.
Thank you guys very much for the talk and for all the answers. I was going to ask, because your projects are very community-based, and now you say you're thinking about moving the projects to UK. Are there certain communities or groups that you would like to kind of get involved or design for?
Yeah, definitely. That's the thing. I think especially after we present a lecture like this, often when we say the word community, it's very easy to picture a village in Fiji or a school in Zambia, but actually community is just, a group of people, and that can be a local youth group down the road. It could be the primary school that you went to when you were younger. It could be a collective of I don't know, farmers or anything, really. So we're looking at doing the same kind of approach. I think.
I think the other thing is both transposing that model as it is, but also seeing how it can fit into other types of work. So just because, for example, building recently, we worked on a kind of private project in the UK through a contact of ours that we had personally. But why can't the people that help us on that build be veterans or ex-offenders or people who through whatever maybe disability they might have wouldn't get employed elsewhere? You can still have that really important social impact through the people that you employ, or by employing diversely, or whatever it might be. So there's loads of ways that you can weave this into your practice as an architect as well, or even as an architecture student. There's no reason to say that there can't be a further impact than just the building itself. So maybe that'll be one route that we'll go down as well, or we are, sorry, at the moment. We're already in talks with partners to help us kind of recognize or find those various groups and demographics.
Yeah, definitely. It's true actually. And like I mentioned earlier, the younger demographic schools, and actually that's maybe what the best avenue to go down if we are looking to diversify the profession. Schools in developing areas, underprivileged areas, mental health, lots, infinite.
If any of you guys have any other questions, you can drop them in a chat box, or you can also put your camera on and show
yourself. Feel free to put your cameras on. It's really weird seeing just names.
No one will do.
Any more questions?
But yeah, if anyone wants to stay up to date with future projects or opportunities or anything like that, or even just see what we're doing, the best place is probably our Instagram. It's probably the most up to date, which is just CAUKIN Studio. And we might have something. Somebody asked if we're doing more about the projects in the UK, because of the current situation, where it's very difficult to plan very far in advance and know exactly when things can or can't go ahead in terms of the construction dates. So the way in which we will be getting students involved in some of those projects will probably be a lot more quick and sporadic when the opportunity arises. So we'll probably, for some of those, put basically a call out on our social media, see who's interested, and it might be a month's notice and it'd be that short. Whereas obviously previously, for example, we've already released our international projects, well in advance. So if that is something you're interested in, that's probably a good place to look.
For sure.
Is there a space where you would like to work next, or this anywhere in the world, kind of? Because now with COVID, obviously, you need to stop all the projects, and it's probably a bit of a question, but like this dream place you would like to.
Definitely, and this is like quite a common conversation we have between us. We can't really kind of go to the pub anymore without talking about work, sadly. But I guess geographical location, we've always wanted to go to South America, and we have 2 potentially really big projects coming up there in the next kind of 5 years or so once they hit the ground. So that'd be really cool. And if anyone watched Race Across the World, you would have seen how incredible South America looks. So can't wait to get out there. I don't know.
Yeah, it's true. There's actually a project in Argentina that will hopefully be releasing properly soon on our website for people to apply to. Due to just the dates of when the construction can happen, it will likely be after the UK summer period, so more like September, October, November. But if there is any sort of third years here that are looking to take a year out, maybe that is actually a project dates that suit you better than the summer. And that's a digital school in Buenos Aires, working in a slum and getting students learning, programming skills, animation skills, computer skills, so that they can get those kind of higher paying jobs that they, you know, otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to. So that's a really, really cool project, and it'll be our first kind of very urban project as well, very densely populated, you know, spot. So yeah.
Or if you're a super proactive industrious student, maybe get Ed into a meeting room and see if he'll change his unit next year to be based in Buenos Aires, and you could get out in September, October. I'm sure you'd be open to that.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of dream locations, I think it would be great to do a project in every kind of extreme climate, you know, one in the desert, one in the mountains, one in the Antarctic, and just like see how extreme and how different they would be to respond to that. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Are there any more questions from people? No, I don't know. That's all. Yeah. Do you guys have anything else to say? No?
Oh, no, that's all good. I think everyone might have gone to bed. No, thank you very much for having us. It's always great to talk to Cardiff students and to hear about what's going on there as well. So hopefully, we're actually both sat in Cardiff, just couldn't all meet in one place, sadly. But yeah, hopefully sometime in the future we can come in and either run a workshop or do a lecture again, or see people face to face.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much again. And I'm sure everyone really enjoyed the lecture. It was very informative. We got a lot of questions as well.
Post it on YouTube as well, so
sure.
Maybe more people.
Brilliant.
Yeah, awesome.
Great.
Thank you very
much.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.